Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 9, Brahma's Prayers for Creative Energy. Text 10. Anya pritartha karana nishayana. Anya pritartha karana nishayana. Nana manorata diyakshana bhakna nidra. Nana manorata diyakshana bhakna nidra. Deva hatarta rachana rishayopi deva. Deva hatarta rachana rishayopi deva. Yushmad prasanga vimukha yasam saranti. Yushmat prasanga vimukha yasam smaranti. Anya pitarta karana nishinishayana. Nana manorata diyakshana bhakna nidra. Deva hatarta rachana rishayopi deva. Yushmat prasanga vimukha yasam smaranti. Anya pitartha karana nishayana. Nana manorata diyakshana bhakna nidra. Deva hatarta rachana rishayopi deva. Yushmat prasanga vimukha yasam smaranti. Ani. During the daytime. Aprita. Engaged. Arta. Distressing engagement. Karana. Senses. Nishi. At night. Nishayana. Insomnia. Nana. Various. Manorata. Mental speculations. Diya. By intelligence. Kshana. Constantly. Bhagna. Broken. Nidra. Sleep. Daiva. Superhuman. Ahata arta. Frustrated. Rachana. Plans. Rishaya. Great sages. Api. Also. Deva. O my Lord. Yushmat. Your lordships. Prasanga. Topic. Vimukha. Turned against. Iha. In this material world. Samsmaranti. To rotate. Translation by His Divine Grace of Acharya Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada K. And purpose, of course, sir. Such non-devotees engage the senses in very troublesome and extensive work, and they suffer insomnia at night because the intelligence constantly breaks their sleep with various mental speculations. They are frustrated in all their various plans by supernatural power. Even great sages, if they are against your transcendental topics, must rotate in this material world. We'll recite now, because it's a long purport. Om Kyanartimirandasya Kananchana Shalakaya Chakshurun Meditam Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Karamayam Darate Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttabarkamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrachatam Sahakanarakunatan Vitam Tam Sachivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parichana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhana Sate Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhyava Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. Thank you for coming or listening online. So we are in beautiful chapter after a previous beautiful chapter where we heard how Lord Brahma got after his on the Lord's instructions, performing his tapasya for the Lord's pleasure, meditating on him through the Simbu said Gopal Gayatri mantra, and for 100 of his years that he got his mercies, so got his darshan, and upon this now we heard the prayers, and it's interesting that those prayers. Briefly at the beginning he did glorify the Lord directly, but then now we have heard a series of verses how, like, even though we understand he just saw directly the Lord face to face and is still seeing him, and his beautiful darshan, which we heard a description at the end of the previous chapter, but he's not dwelling too much now on describing that, glorifying the Lord, but he's out of because now that he is fully aware of his duty, of what the Lord wants him to do, the secondary creation, which means creating all the bodies for the living entities in which they have to enjoy and suffer the material happiness and distress, and the planetary systems, and at the very beginning the 5 layers of ignorance and all of that. So that's what the Lord wants him to do for the Lord's pleasure, that's his duty, but then at the same time, as a pure Vaishnava, he feels great compassion, and that we heard in a series of verses now. Because I was thinking, otherwise in one sense it would seem even, if you look at those kind of verses, like what's the point of, especially here being directly in front of the Lord has unlimited opulence, unlimited pastimes, beauty, all of that, so there's so much to glorify, which is directly, fully transcendental, ecstatic. So a devotee, one could think, should focus on that. Why would he even talk about these, like actually material things, if you wouldn't understand that it's directly in relation to the Lord? Like one verse that, when last year when I read this section myself, which was striking me because I was like it shows how such great souls do really, even though they're fully absorbed in the Lord, in ecstatic love for Him, but at the same time they also think so much into detail. We saw that exhibited by Srila Prabhupada also, obviously also so much of how the living entities are suffering here. And like one of those verses, I think 2 or 3 days ago we heard, is which really describes of all, specifically like which otherwise even could seem kind of trivial, of like what living entities, what material life is like. Like we know, we face the Adidaivic klesha, as ordained by the demigods, and all the which we face as natural disasters and all of that. Then the Adibhautic klesha from giving by other living entities bodies, and the Adhyatmika by our own body and mind. So Lord Brahma described that to the Lord. So that verse was Kshutre Tridatu Birima Murar Artyamana, where it describes Kshut, hunger, Trit, first, Tridatupir, all the miseries which are given by the dhatus, by like the bile mucus, those layers, and then so they face great extreme cold, sometimes extreme heat. They face subjected to wind, to rain, heavy rains, and and so many other natural disturbances. So that's basically the Adidaivic klesha. The first one was Adhyatmic, of their own body, Kshut Tridatupir, and then the third line. It's quite the language he uses is very powerful also, because foolishly, especially nowadays, we see how the human beings think that the highest pleasure is simply sense gratification, especially obviously as is always in the case in the material world of conditioned souls, in the form of sex, but actually they have no idea that those very forces are what just maddens you and what drives you doing things which you regret later, and which helplessly you're just enslaved by material nature in this way, especially. So Lord Brahma describes it very powerfully as Kam Aknina Chutarusha Chasudurbarena, which means Kama Agnina, the fire of lust. So he says, I think it's burning. Well, how exactly does this Prabhupada say in the translation? And Kamagnida and Achyutarusha, and we know Achyuta is infallible, so Prabhupada translates this as indefatigable anger. So where's the last verse? Sorry, 8, right? Just 2 days ago. Yeah. So I'll just read the translation quickly again. It's very powerful and beautiful also how Prabhupada puts that together. O great actor, my lord, all these poor creatures are constantly perplexed by hunger, thirst, severe cold, secretion and bile, attacked by coughing winter, blasting summer, rains and many other disturbing elements, and overwhelmed by strong sex urges. Yeah, that's how I said. And overwhelmed by strong sex urges and indefatigable anger. And then the last line is that Lord Brahma then expresses how all of this gives him great pain. Well, of course, like Bhavi Bushmur described yesterday, it's not material pain that those great devotees go through when they feel this compassion, but it's a spiritual pain out of compassion that they feel. So he's saying, Sampashyato manaruro kramasira teme. So Sampashyata, observing this, all of these miseries, and observing means, remember, he hasn't even created yet, so it's not even manifest, but already he knows and he's foreseeing, I'll create this, and all these living entities, they have to go through all these miseries. So that's how great the compassion of pure devotees is. Even if it hasn't happened yet, already like we see that similarly, all the sages of Naimisharanya, they are in great distress of foreseeing how Kali Yuga will take its turn, how it will affect all the living entities, how much they will suffer. And that's why we hear from Sutta Goswami and spoken Srimad Bhagavatam after they concluded that is the best thing they can do for our benefit. So similarly here, Lord Brahma is he says so observing, but actually observing is in his mind. Foreseeing, you can say. And Mano Urukrama Ogredek Sidateme, in that way so the line how Prabhupada puts in the translation is, I take pity on them and I'm very much aggrieved for them. So, and then similarly in yesterday's verse he continued with I'll just read the translation again as well. So he says, O my Lord, the material miseries are without factual existence for the soul. Yet as long as the conditioned soul sees the body as meant for enjoyment, he cannot get out of the entanglement of material miseries, being influenced by your external energy. So, and today, then I'll read the translation again, and then start with the purport. It's a long and powerful purport. So, translation is that such non-devotees engage the senses in very troublesome and extensive work, and they suffer insomnia at night, because their intelligence constantly breaks the sleep with various mental speculations. They are frustrated in all their various plans by supernatural power. Even great sages, if they are against their transcendental topics, must rotate in this material world. So, purport. As described in the previous verse, people who have no taste for the devotional service of the Lord are occupied in material engagements. Most of them engage during the daytime in hard physical labor. Their senses are engaged very extensively in troublesome duties in the gigantic plants of heavy industrial enterprise. The owners of such factories are engaged in finding a market for the industrial products, and the laborers are engaged in extensive production involving huge mechanical arrangements. Factory is another name for hell. At night, hellishly engaged persons take advantage of wine and women to satisfy the tired senses. But they are not even able to have sound sleep, because their various mental speculative plans constantly interrupt their sleep. So, we heard that's in the translation itself, that because their intelligence constantly breaks their sleep with various mental speculation, because of that they suffer insomnia. So that's amazing if you think about, like Prabhupada describes here. It's not only that they undergo so much suffering during the day, working so hard just to get this tiny little sense gratification. So we discussed recently quite a lot, like Prahlad Maharaj saying, Sukham hitucham, that's all that they get. And and then you would think, okay, at night then they enjoy their union with their partner of the opposite sex and enjoy sleeping. But Prabhupada and Lord Brahma says here that no, they can't even properly sleep many times. Because why? Because their mind is so disturbed, then their intelligence is simply full of trying to make plans to somehow desperately squeeze out happiness in this world, which is by default full of material miseries. So, continue here. Because they suffer from insomnia, sometimes they feel sleepy in the morning for lack of sufficient rest. By the arrangement of supernatural power, even the great scientists and thinkers of the world suffer frustration of their various plans and thus rot in the material world birth after birth. A great scientist may make discoveries in atomic energy for the quick destruction of the world, and may be awarded the best prize in recognition of his service, or disservice, but he also has to undergo the reactions of his work by rotating in the cycle of repeated births and deaths, under the superhuman law of material nature. All these people who are against the principle of devotional service are destined to rotate in this material world without fail. So Prabhupada then here turns towards the scientists as well. And because like we see, especially nowadays, how after so much advancement in terms of technology and arranging for material comforts, like AC and nice heating systems and hot water and all, like so many facilities which provide for our material comfort, and also, for example, that previously people used to their work mostly used to consist of hard physical labor, like on the field, or other, what's it called, those kind of or professions where they make use, I can't remember, but anyway, like, whereas nowadays mostly it's simply sitting in the office, which is externally, very comfortable, it has nice, perfect temperature, you can have coffee and anything at any time you like. But like I heard recently Chaitanya Chandru, and I was listening to his series he gave on Ishopanishad, because we were studying that on the weekend. So and there he mentioned that, like, yeah, so they might be. So, like, he made the sentence. He uses the language very expertly always to describe. So he said, so now these people are very comfortably miserable. So they externally they might be very comfortable, like the body, like sitting in the office. Previously, people used to sweat working hard outside on the field, and now they sit comfortably in the office and with perfect temperature for their body, but then still many times they sweat. And why is that? Because they're under so much pressure and have so much mental distress of how they're going to do their work, if they're going to lose the job, or will they be able to get promotion, or so many things. And so they're comfortably miserable. They actually meant previously people, they had more tapasya for the body, but then mentally they were much more peaceful and much more happy. So they were maybe a bit more distressed outside, but they were happy. Now they are comfortably miserable. So that's the great advancement, thanks to our modern civilization, like Prabhupada discusses here. And of course the point that he makes, that even no matter what the greatest advancement, but no one is able to stop the repeated births and deaths, which is the main point he criticized about scientists, because people sometimes criticize Prabhupada. Why are you always criticizing? You are always criticizing so much, because you're a sadhu, you're supposed to be samadarshana, right? But again, obviously, Prabhupada, why did he do that? He did it out of great compassion. He did not at all look down on anyone like we would do, out of false ego, wanting to put down other people so that we can boost up our false ego. But rather out of great compassion, because he knows how much, for example, this point, that how much people are misled by scientists posing themselves as being able to explain the world. Like, it's fine. He said, like, we're also using microphone and all those technologies for the service of the Lord as needed and as possible. But so that's fine if scientists do something like this, even though actually it wouldn't be necessary if there would be proper Vedic civilization where we would live more closer to the nature and all of that. Now we have this pumped up lifestyle. But anyway, now that it's there, if they want to take credit for that, that's fine. But they should not. That's where Prabhupada is always heavy on them, that the people are misled by their propositions and theories about explaining the origin of life, apparently explaining how there is no God. And so that's the great disservice, like Prabhupada says here. I'll read the sentence again. A great scientist may make discoveries in atomic energy for the quick destruction of the world and may be awarded the best prize in recognition of his service or disservice, but he also has to undergo the reactions of his work by rotating in the cycle of repeated births and deaths under the superhuman law of material nature. So, one more point comes up here with under the superhuman law of material nature, like Chaitanya Charan Prabhu was mentioning. It's even the scientists, because we see that to attain something, get some power, that's only which you don't have, which means you have to get it from someone who is superior to you. We see that, like in the greatest demonstration by Hiranyakashipu, for example, the greatest demon of all times. But how did he become so great? Also by recognizing there's someone superior to me, like Lord Brahma, and at least, even if he didn't recognize Lord Vishnu. So that's he had to perform great austerities, and that's how he got powerful, that he got it awarded. So that's how, like, yogis get mystic powers. That's on a more subtle level, on a more higher level. But on a lower level, even scientists, they make achievements by recognizing the power of material nature, and by then trying to understand the laws of material nature, then to manipulate accordingly to whatever they want to achieve. But so the other point here, Prabhupada makes, that they may get awarded for those things many times. Like, I think I heard it in a morning walk recently from Prabhupada in Bombay, where some of his disciples explained that. What was it? Or no, I think that was also Chaitanya Prabhu mentioning how, for example, I believe he said the planet Venus, that some time ago it was someone discovered that the surface. I mean, that's how it was believed. I can't remember what was before or after, but that's not the point. That the surface of the Venus is a very fiery, extremely hot, and then a bit after, and he got the award for that. And then a bit after, someone else apparently discovered that no, actually, it's like, I can't remember exactly, but the point is actually it's like completely cold, and I think ice. There's even ice on the surface, something like that. So complete opposite, and he again also got the award. So that's the kind of joke which is going on in name of scientific advancement. And then, but okay, then let them joke, but then at least they shouldn't make claims of explaining the world. That's the disaster. So we'll continue. This verse particularly mentions that even sages who are averse to the principles of devotional service to the Lord are also condemned to undergo the terms of material existence. Not only in this age, but formerly also, there were many sages who tried to invent their own systems of religion without reference to devotional service to the Supreme Lord. But there cannot be any religious principle without devotional service to the Lord. The Supreme Lord is the leader of the entire range of living entities. No one can be equal to or greater than him. Even the Lord's impersonal feature and all-pervading localized feature cannot be on an equal level with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, there cannot be any religion or system of genuine philosophy for the advancement of the living entities without the principle of devotional service. So, Prabhupada makes here the point of how it's not something new that people are misled. It has always been present, because we know, after all, we are all rebellious souls who came to the material world, so then it's the nature of the conditioned soul to not listen to the Lord, not submissively take the instructions from the Vedas through disciplic succession, but to wanting to think themselves greater by coming up with their own theories and philosophies. And that was done even by renounced sages in previous ages, as Prabhupada is pointing out here. But real religion is not even if you, Prabhupada is saying here, not even if you get knowledge alone about the Lord's impersonal feature, or even about the Supersoul realizing Paramatma in your heart, but only if it's about the Supreme Personality of God and His Bhagavan feature. So, continuing, the impersonalists who take much trouble in penance and austerity for self-liberation may approach the impersonal Brahmacharya, but ultimately, because of not being situated in devotional service, they glide down again to the material world to undergo another term of material existence. This is confirmed as follows. Yanyarvindaksh vimuktamaninas tvayasta bhavada vishuddha bodhaya Aryuya krichrena padam padam tata patantyado anadrita yushmat angrayaha. Persons who are falsely under the impression of being liberated without devotional service to the Lord may reach the goal of the Brahmacharya, but because of their impure consciousness and for want of shelter in the Vaikuntha lokas, such so-called liberated persons again fall down into material existence. So Prabhupada here now pointed out that yes, as we know, temporarily, someone properly following the path of monism, of trying to realize the Lord's impersonal feature, the Brahmacharya, can be situated in the Lord's Brahmacharya and therefore be free from all material miseries, and that way realize His Sat feature, eternity. But they eventually will also fall down, as we know, because only if the soul, it's the soul's eternal occupation, eternal constitution and position to engage in the Lord's devotional service. Only that can satisfy the soul, yayatman suprasidati. So, then continuing, therefore, No one can manufacture any system of religion without the principle of devotional service to the Lord. As we find in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the initiator of religious principles is the Lord himself. In Bhagavad Gita also we find that the Lord condemns all forms of religion other than that which entails the process of surrendering unto the Supreme. Any system which leads one to the devotional service of the Lord and nothing else is actually religion or philosophy. In the 6th canto we find the following statements of Yamaraj, the controller of all unfaithful living entities. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam na vai vidurishayo na pideva na siddha mukhya suramanashya kuton vidyadharaccharanadaya Svayambhu narada shambhu kumara kapido mano pralada chanako bhishmo balirvaya sakirvayam Devadaya shaite vichanimo dharmam bhagavatam bhata kuyam vishuddham durbodham yam yat kyatvam. The principles of religion are initiated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and no one else, including the sages and demigods, can manufacture any such principles. Since even great sages and demigods are unauthorized to inaugurate such principles of religion, what to speak of others, the so-called mystics, demons, human beings, Vidyadharas and Charanas living in the lower planets? 12 personalities, Brahma, Narada, Lord Shiva, Kumara, Kapila, Manu, Prahlad Maharaj, Janaka Maharaj, Bhishma, Bali, Shukadeva Goswami and Yamaraj are agents of the Lord authorized to speak and propagate the principles of religion. Srimad Bhagavatam 6.3, 19-21. The principles of religion are not open to any ordinary living entity. They are just to bring the human being onto the platform of morality. Non-violence, etc. are necessary for misguided persons because unless one is moral and non-violent, one cannot understand the principles of religion. To understand what is actually religion is very difficult even if one is situated in the principles of morality and non-violence. It is very confidential because as soon as one is conversant with the real principles of religion, he is at once liberated to the eternal life of bliss and knowledge. So, here we hear how even bona fide principles of religion, ordinary principles of religion, are not the ultimate religion. They are simply meant to bring the human beings to a platform of morality. So basically, to the platform of being an ordinary human being. Because if you don't follow those principles, even then you are no better than an animal, as Prabhupada explains many times. So, like for example, non-violence. Prabhupada mentions here that unless one is moral and non-violent, one cannot understand the principles of religion. And that's also why we see, for example, how Jesus Christ, when he appeared 2,000 years ago, he didn't give, even though he himself perhaps knew, like the Vedas and Krishna, or at least he knew more than he taught to his disciples, like being situated in love of Godhead. But he just preached on those basic moral principles, like the 10 commandments, it's called in English, right? Yeah. And like for example, thou shalt not kill, and that's like Prabhupada says. Why do you tell someone thou shalt not kill? This means that they were killing, that a lot of sins were committed at that time, and so for the people to whom he preached to at that time. So that's why first he endeavored to mostly bring them to a platform of morality. But thinking that is the all in all, that's another mistake, of course, because it doesn't give you love of God, that you have to come to devotional service. But that Prabhupada said further, then here, why is it not given easily? So he's saying it is very confidential, because as soon as one is conversant with the real principles of religion, he is at once liberated to the eternal life of bliss and knowledge. And especially because we know that Krishna, being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, full of all opulence, is the master of everyone. But what he takes most pleasure in is forgetting about his role as the Supreme Lord and voluntarily coming under the control of the love of his devotees. And that's what the potency of devotion, of pure devotional service, and that's why he doesn't give devotional service as easily as even liberation, what to speak of any material benedictions. So, therefore, one who is not situated in the principles of devotional service to the Lord should not pose himself as a religious leader of the innocent public. The Upanishad emphatically forbids this nonsense in the following mantra: Antam tama pravishyanti yasambhutim upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo ya usambhutya rata. Upanishad mantra 12. A person in ignorance of the principles of religion who therefore does nothing in the matter of religion is far better than a person who misguides others in the name of religion without reference to the factual religious principles of devotional service. So yeah, that's another point that Prabhupada, again, as he's calling scientists rascals, out of great compassion of seeing how people are misled by them. Similarly, another important group obviously is all those so-called religious leaders, which he's pointing out here, because that's another great, it's amazing, see how desperate the situation is in the world nowadays without Krishna consciousness. That on the one hand you have those who don't believe in God at all, who follow the scientists, crazy theories, and on the other hand, those who still have some faith in God, then they also are misled by all different kinds of so-called religious leaders who don't have bona fide knowledge of the Lord, who don't follow disciplic succession, and who don't teach pure devotional service, but something else, maybe as Mayavadis or maybe other concocted forms of religion, which we see so prevalent nowadays. So, Prabhupada is continuing here that such so-called leaders of religion are sure to be condemned by Brahma and other great authorities. Oh, okay, sorry, that's it. So, yeah, a long, powerful Prabhupada, and also fully in the mood of, just as Lord Brahma is here in his verses of not being able to bear seeing the suffering of all these living entities. So, in terms of, like Prabhupada, as we read the verses he quoted here from 6th canto from Yamaraj, who is himself one of the 12 Mahachans, and which is one of the verses he tells who is those actual authorities. So, Krishna, he clearly, right from the start, he gives the knowledge, and also he clearly sets out of how the knowledge is to be given. As we know in Bhagavad Gita, how it tells Arjuna, Ivam parampara praptam imam richa shajo viduhu, that this knowledge, it can only be received through parampara. Because otherwise, she said before, with as we heard here, the great different sages even, who concoct the different systems of philosophy and religion. Because, we know, like the Prabhupada discusses that elaborately at the beginning of Upanishad, which he quoted here also, that the conditioned souls, we know we are all subject to the 4 defects of imperfect senses, committing mistakes, being illusioned, and cheating others. So, and that's why there's no other possibility of having perfect knowledge of the Lord and of the world, of ourselves, other than receiving it through parampara. Because even if, and so much so that not only does it have to be the original knowledge, but even you need to have it explained by someone who comes through parampara. Because otherwise, even reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, you will concoct your own things. Like Ganesh Prabhu several times he quoted that Prabhupada in one purport is explaining that if you don't hear in the association of devotees, then you'll come to an impersonal understanding of the Lord, even if you read our Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's how much dependent we are on parampara. And that's why even sages who are pure in terms of not committing any sinful activities, engaged in meditation and studying the literatures of given by the Lord, but if they don't follow in parampara, then they also simply relying on their mind, which is still impure and imperfect, then we come to wrong conclusions. And one other point I didn't focus much at the beginning of the purport, very powerfully Prabhupada, how he describes actually factories in which many people, obviously at that time was maybe even more, less offices and more factories. Now it's perhaps more people in offices, as we said. Now they might not undergo so much trouble in on the more gross platform as in factories. But again, that's actually in the developed world. And factories are basically were shifted towards the more poorer countries. So it's still there. I mean, everything we get somehow it has to be manufactured. So even there's so many machines who do that to some degree, but still there's many people who have even physically to work so hard. And so Prabhupada here is saying that actually factory is another name for hell. So, because, and that again shows, it's amazing that many people, they might not believe or not want to believe into the existence of hellish planets and think, no, I don't care, I just want to, don't disturb my happiness, I just want to enjoy my senses here. But actually, if you think about it, not only is it like terribly ignorant and of what you might face then after they give up this body, but what to speak of that, even in this life, people are undergoing hellish conditions. And why is that? We last time discussed that Lord Kapila is explaining that even if one is situated in a hellish body, still by the influence of the Lord's illusory energy, if you're hell-bent to wanting to be happy in this world, you'll still somehow consider yourself happy, and you will not want to give up the body and not want to surrender to the Lord. So that's the plight of humanity nowadays. If it were not for the mercy of great devotees like Srila Prabhupada. So I was thinking one point also in terms of like I forgot the links and I remember. So yesterday I was trying to memorize one famous verse of Lord Rishabhdev, who obviously his instructions to his 100 sons are very much on this topic of how people are bewildered, how they are suffering. And again, like we see, and Lord Rishabhdev is the Lord himself, and so when he's speaking heavily, again, it's initially when we come new to Krishna consciousness, we sometimes might still feel that, like, why are they trying to destroy all of my dreams for material happiness? I mean, cannot it be both? Okay, I accept Krishna, but then, I mean, still something there, right, in sense clarification. So why are they so heavy? It's like kind of cruel. And we see that even with Krishna himself, like, but again, as a devotee we understand the Lord has no business in being derogative, putting anyone down. He's unequaled, like there's no question of any competition of his position. That's like one foolishness that people sometimes have, that they, in other so-called religions, for example, that they think, well, the Lord is kind of eager to protect his position. And but obviously that's not so. His only concern of thinking about conditioned souls is in great compassion. So we see that with Krishna himself many times, obviously, that he speaks also chastising through Arjuna as conditioned souls, as calling us Muda several times, like Muda Chanmani Namam Tushkitanato Muda Mutyo, where is it? Navich, the Lokumam Navichanati, Muto Yam, I think also in that verse, right? That he, Naham Prakasha Sarasya, Yogamasama vrittaha lokam. Is it? No, not in this verse. But anyway, several times he uses the word mudha, which means fool. So, yeah, why does he call us fool? It's out of compassion, of trying to wake us up, of understanding the foolish, unnecessary suffering that we undergo. Like Vyasadeva, it's described at the beginning of Bhagavatam, how he, out of great compassion, compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam, seeing how the living entities, we all undergo this suffering, which is, in Prabhupada there he says, which is superfluous to us. Anato pashamam sakshat bhakti yogam adokshache. Yeah. That anartha, it has no value and it's superfluous. It has, completely unnecessary for the soul, which is purely spiritual. So anyway, sorry, I'm getting late. So this verse, one of those famous verses Lord Rishabhdev is telling, nonam pramata kurate vikarmam yad indriya priyataya aprinoti na sadhumanye yata atmanoyam asannapi kleshada asadeha. So where he, again out of great compassion, and the first word nunam means certainly. So again, in contrast to all those so-called religious leaders, when the Lord himself or his pure devotees speak, there is no maybe, perhaps, it's certainly whatever they say is true and is for our benefit. So he certainly knows that that is happening, that we undergo in the suffering. So nunam pramata, mad, that one who considers sense gratification the aim of life, he is certainly mad after material living, material enjoyment, and because of that he simply then engages in various sinful activities, kurate vikarma. But na sadhumanye atmano, sadhumanye one word I'm listening to. Yeah. So, but this is certainly not befitting for the real Atma, which is the spirit soul, to undergo all this suffering. Anyway, I'll quickly finish and then read the translation itself, because that's very powerful also. And then asanapi kleshada asideha, that asan, because this body, even though it's temporary, but api kleshada, still it is the very thing which is the cause of all your miseries. So I'll read the translation, because I heard recently from our Guru Maharaj that he mentioned that obviously we know that the Prabhupada is especially important, because Prabhupada himself said that that's a spiritual ecstasies, anyone can translate. But still, Guru Maharaj mentions, we see many times in even word to word and in the translation also, that Prabhupada is turbocharging them with his full realization and purpose, and that's one of these translations. So Prabhupada translates this verse, that when a person considers sense gratification the aim of life, he certainly becomes mad after materialistic living and engages in all kinds of sinful activity. He does not know that due to his past misdeeds, he has already received a body which, although temporary, is the cause of his misery. Actually, the living entity should not have taken on a material body, but he has been awarded the material body for sense gratification. Therefore, I think it not befitting an intelligent man to involve himself again in the activities of sense gratification, by which he perpetually gets material bodies one after another. So, yeah, we see how we think we have been given the body because the Lord gave us the body, we should enjoy it, but obviously no. Showing that we are in this body shows already that we did a great mistake. It's only due to our past mistakes, our wrong desires, our misusing our independence. So understanding that, we should not again, now finally being in this human form of life, not again engage in that. And I was thinking, because quickly now to mention about, we discussed recently about how the Lord gave the benediction to the Prachetas, that they would not only get pure devotional service, but for a special case for them that he awarded them also with full sense gratification, with unhindered, without hindrance, that they would be able to enjoy full strength for thousands of years. And so, because the interesting point is, like, we see on the one hand Lord Rishabdev speaking out of great compassion and pain that this conditioned souls, they're simply mad, because they, even though they have this material body which already shows that they made the mistake, they again think, no, that's for enjoyment, and again increase their suffering. Whereas on the other hand, pure devotees like the Prachetas, they, even though, like, for them the Lord personally appeared to them and said that you have pure devotion service, but for them he also gave, okay, but I want you to be rulers of the world, and therefore naturally you'll have sense gratification as well. And they, of course, under the order of the Lord accepted it, but then being pure devotees, they then in their turn feel actually in their humility that actually, oh, we got bewildered again, we engaged in sense gratification. So at one point then later, they, after thousands of years, they apparently realized that, oh, we got entangled in this material activities, and so then they go off and to the ashram of one sage, what's it called, Chala, something, I forgot his name now, and there then one day then Narad Muni comes, and they in great humility receive him, worship him, and explain that we got, even though the Lord how unfortunate we are, even though the Lord personally came already and gave us his darshan, gave us his benedictions, and still we got caught again in materialistic life. And so that's the attitude of a pure devotee. And Narad Muni there gives brief but quite famous instructions also, where he first describes of how nothing, if it doesn't lead to pure devotional service, is useless, like concerning the three kind of births, as we know. Chakra Janma by seminal birth, and then Savitra Janma and Yakika Janma of the being initiated into chanting the holy name, or then into chanting Gayatri, worshipping the deity of the Lord. And one famous verse he gives there also with the root and of the tree, but I won't spend time on that now, because I quickly also wanted to mention. Similarly, we see that with Priyavrata Maharaj, which we had discussed last time, how he got instructed, like we know, he was already for thousands or even millions of years engaged in full pure devotion service as a Naishnika Brahmachari, and got under the instruction of Narad Muni, but then even Lord Brahma himself came down to convince him to take up rulership of Bhumandala. And he pacified him in one verse, as we discussed, by saying, take shelter in the lotus of the feet of the Lord. I think that's how he described, as we pointed out. It's not only, generally we say lotus feet as describing the beauty of the Lord's feet, but here he gave the description of how, if you're sheltered at the lotus feet of the Lord, it's just like a bee. Honeybees can fully focus on relishing the nectar inside, because the petals protected from any external disturbances. Similar, if you are situated at the Lord's lotus feet, you're protected from external things and can just relish the nectar of his lotus feet. So, and there, so that's discussed last time. And then, of course, Priyavrata Maharaj engaged in ruling the earth, and then eventually also he, in humility, really was thinking, I was nunam pramata kurte vikarma. I just got bewildered simply in enjoying sense gratification, and so then immediately it renounced everything and also went off. So, there we see how pure devotees, they think themselves bewildered, even though they are fully situated in pure devotional service. Whereas, unfortunately, conditioned souls, even if you go to them and try to humbly explain, many times they are not ready to hear, and they think themselves situated in happiness, even though they undergo so much suffering, as we heard here. So I'll conclude here. If there's any question or comment. Isvaresvara Prabhu ki jai.